Yeah, the ethical values of an organization matter to employees as much as they matter to consumers. So if you have things in your organization like ethically sourced products, recycled, fair trade, that can all really help to reinforce the fact, the idea that actually you're working for the good guys, you're working for people who've got a social conscience. So I was talking about bringing the culture to life through maybe awards for your employment attributes. But Lindsay's point is really strong. That actually in your business show, strong things that show that you've got strong values. They impact positively on retention. Okay, I think that's similar to the point that I was making earlier on when I said 28%. You can expect to see a 20% rise in retention. People like to think that they are working for an organization that's good at heart. And the more they see that, the more likely they are to stay and want to be part of something. It's, they're sharing their beliefs. Their beliefs kind of connect with your beliefs. It helps you differentiate from your competitors. So again, this is what I was talking about. How do we make it different? So things like company charity days, salary sacrifice, work experience programs for excluded minority or disadvantaged groups. What can we do to show, not just say, but show that we are taking action that has social value? And millennials and Gen Z, they are so driven now by forces for good. If you are not showing these things, they just won't consider you from the off. So you really, really need to be bringing this to the fore, not just showing your culture, but also showing your values and the impact of what you do. Okay.
Yeah. Around the corporate social responsibility aspect, I think it's so important these days, for organizations to not just focus on, what they do, but also how they help to impact society in a positive way.
Yeah. Okay. So leveraging social media. Just reading a note that Lindsay made here, saying the Edelman Trust Barometer from 2022. So Edelman Trust Barometer is a great tool, and it basically measures how much people trust brands, and how much they think they're telling the truth, and therefore how much they're likely to commit themselves to it. So she's saying, aspirate how much they trust sectors based on a 9-point scale. Financial services in 2022 came out worst. Now, that is probably understandable because the kind of reputation of financial services was severely damaged in the financial crisis of 2008, and it's struggled to recover. But they have the opportunity to build trust with audiences through valuable content like how to stay aware of fraud, how to save for your future. So those organizations have got the opportunity to kind of rebuild trust in them through storytelling and through branding and through employer branding. But at the moment, when trust is that low, it's very, very hard to attract people and attract confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, leveraging social media. And what Lindsay was saying is the appetite is very much there. Nearly a quarter of 16 to 24-year-olds have financial services apps, and 10% even invest in cryptocurrency, which is slightly terrifying. 74% of global audiences use online and social media to research financial decisions. So people, what she's saying is, although trust in financial services is quite low, there is the opportunity for them to really build, because the audience is there. People are using these tools every day. So yeah, absolutely, people are open to these stories, but they need to do the storytelling to rebuild that confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then she's giving some examples here of building trust. So we can see Starling Bank there targeting females with sports interests, and Poly Insurance targeting mums. And she's saying building trust with relevant and useful content, relevant influencers, and gain data and insight. So using influencers to kind of tell the stories helps you to build trust. So Starling Bank have targeted campaigns that have gained 12.5 million engagements and 8% average engagement rates. So people are wanting to engage, they're wanting to hear these stories. And yeah, absolutely, it has a real impact. And finance companies using social media, 95% of them are on Facebook, 75% on LinkedIn, 62% on Instagram, 41% on Twitter, 39% on YouTube, and 19% blogs. But interestingly, she's saying hardly any of them are using TikTok, but actually, if you're trying to get to the young audience, that's where they all are now. So yeah, that's just my little interpretation on what Lindsay was going to talk about. So I haven't seen those slides before, so
no, you absolutely don't worry, David. I understand. That's Thank you so much.
And a little bit about Lindsay there as well.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I think there are a couple of, or maybe there's one more question or so. How to leverage social media. I think you've already explained that. Let me share my screen so that people.
So I'll just stop sharing.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. So how to leverage social media. Obviously, there's something Lindsay there's a topic questions actually for Lindsay. I'm just going to use myself, as an accountant. I don't know. A lot of people will say accountant are introvert. We are indeed. But again, if you are running your own practice, you have to be on social media. That one for sure. So it took me a while to kind of able to leverage social media, because I was like, I don't really understand this stuff, but again, I got to understand one thing, that even if you don't understand the stuff, you can, hire people who understand the stuff to do it for you.
Yeah.
So as a business, for me, I think it's so important that you're on social media. And I think you've mentioned some of those social media platforms when you were going through Lindsay, slides. So it's very important that we leverage social media. There's so much opportunity on social media. It doesn't matter what your business is, because sometimes it's not about people actually buying your service or product, but also it's important that you have that some social media presence, and you are actually telling the story, as David was saying, letting them know about your organization, telling the story about your people, and doing all of that. So now the Q&A session. I think we have a couple of questions here. Let me see. I'm gonna stop share now. 1 sec. So we got a question from Temi. So what feature trends in employer branding should we be aware of? What feature trends of employer branding we should be aware of?
So that's a really good question. I think we will be seeing employer branding at the moment still kind of sits, and is usually owned by talent acquisition. It's still kind of viewed as it's inextricably linked to recruitment, and that will always be the case. But what we've seen over the last few years is that employer brand is becoming much broader and is being adopted across all areas of an organization. So internal comms are getting hold of it, going, oh wow, this is good for attention, this is great for our storytelling. Great, okay, so we want to be part of this story. Corporate brand teams, we're finding much more than ever before, are becoming involved with employer brand, because they see this as a great way of selling their services and telling their story to their customers. And in some cases, what they sell to their customers is the people. The people are the brand. So employer branding is becoming something more holistic. It's not just a recruitment tool anymore. It's becoming more about how everybody is involved, and it's all about the business as a whole. And we're going to see more and more of that happening, I think. So just employer branding becoming more holistic. The other thing, which is probably, if you ask anybody a question anywhere about anything at the moment about what are the future trends, they'll say AI, and they're different. AI is going to have a big impact on how we produce employer branding. It won't find the story for you. It's not clever enough to do that yet. Maybe it will one day. But at the moment, you've still got to find the true story yourself. You've got to go and do that research. However, when we're looking at scaling it out, when we're saying, how are we going to make content? How am I going to make hundreds of social media posts? How am I going to produce these little videos that we're going to put on in various places? What should my career site say? All of a sudden, AI, ChatGPT and the like are powering that, enabling you to produce great content. You just feed in the story, it'll produce great content that you can fire out, so you can scale it much bigger and wider. So AI is going to have a much bigger impact on employer branding going forward. None of us quite know what it is yet, so new, but what we can see at the moment is that it's scaling of it and producing the content. It's really assisting that already. So,
thank you, Dave. There's another question here. What's the best way to measure the effectiveness of employer branding efforts?
Okay, so I think there's two different sets of measures. And going back to the point before that employer branding was traditionally seen just as a recruitment kind of thing. In those days, we used to measure things like cost per hire, time to hire, number of applications, number of interviews being passed as the evidence that we needed that employer branding was working. But these days, we're trying to talk to people who are not thinking about applying for a job now. They're thinking about what the future might look like. So they're a different set of measures. They're much more about sentiment, much more about what people feel about you. So rather than just being hard hiring metrics, they're more about sentiment. And these can be things like your social media engagements, how many people are following you, how many people are signing up to your talent pool, how many people are reacting positively to your social media activity. So more sentiment-driven engagement. So if you combine the two, you are probably getting a set of measures which are kind of, you can put numbers against, but you can also say, yes, we're also influencing the job seekers of the future as well. So two kind of sets of measures to think about.
Yeah, there's a question here. This is in relation to your previous, you mentioned employees can help spread the message about your company's culture and vision. How important is employee feedback in shaping the employer brand?
Yeah.
And what
so employee feedback is pretty much everything. The word that we use a lot in employer branding is authenticity. If it's not authentic, if it's not real, if it's not believable, then you are going to struggle. So it's absolutely critical. And how do we gather that feedback to shape the employer brand? We talked earlier on about running surveys, asking, surveying the company. Use something like SurveyMonkey to put out a survey to a business saying, what do we like about working here? Why do we work here? What's good about it? We can use engagement surveys to find our evidence as well. That'll tell us what people like and what they don't like. Focus groups are a fantastic way of doing it because you can dig much deeper with focus groups. Rather than just getting an answer to a question, you can ask the question, well, why? Why do you feel that way? And you can get people bouncing off each other with their views as well. So focus groups to get kind of deep color and shape to your answers, and surveys and engagement surveys to give you the kind of quantitative data as well. So yeah, that's the feedback from real feedback from people is absolutely critical.
Yeah, definitely. And lastly, how does company culture influence employee So employee branding and what can companies do to align